Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Gotham. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode. This episode also kind of tapped into something I kind of brought up earlier, almost kind of like this moral code that the villains in this universe kind of have. Because in actuality, they haven't... I mean, I guess they've killed a few people, but I guess like you have to go back through the series and kind of tally stuff up because a lot of the people they've killed have typically been bad people. I don't outright think Barbara's killed like too many innocent people. She's been like running things as like a crime boss and stuff like that. Penguin, I'm trying to think. I don't think Penguin's killed too many innocent people. I think the only person that has is Ed, and that's kind of like, I don't know. For him, it's just because I even love him being like, I'm not a murderer. Well, except from Skringle and also that cop. But, you know, other than that, these were innocent people. That's like, yeah, which is interesting because I think in the, like most canons and stuff like that, they're mass murderers, you know. So it's kind of, it's just interesting to take this approach. But it's like, in the grand scheme of things, I don't think they've called us mass destruction and stuff like that. But like some of the known villains we've come to know across the show haven't really gone that nuts, you know. So it's actually kind of interesting. Well, they've gone nuts, but just not in that regard. Because even Barbara was willing to give him a shot. You know, Penguin was even willing to give him a shot when it was all said and done about this whole situation. Because I love it because I obviously a buddy of Jim's, LaGuardia, shows up. I should have figured something was off. The fact because in retrospect, it's like they're the people he's fighting after the time skip, but. You know, like what we saw at the, you know, the media res, you know, start at the middle or end and then kind of circle back, you know, at how we did that at the beginning of the season. So I should have figured it looked like it was the army or whatever they were fighting, but I wasn't really sure about like what were the circumstances around that. But it makes sense why they would kill that arms dude because he literally had answers because it was all pointing to Ed. I also love that Ed's like, we have a lot to talk about, Oswald. Also, did you name your dog after me? And also love when Ed was being electrocuted by those car batteries, and he's like, "Oh no, don't do this! Please don't shoot! Don't! I'd rather be shot than shocked! Please! Oh no!" And it like caused them to kind of blow up their catch on fire and stuff like that. I thought that was pretty neat. But what's interesting about all that is kind of like, for one, like his buddy, Jim's buddy, LaGuardia, played by Shane West, which seen him in a few things. I feel like kind of, I'm not that familiar with the show, but I associate him with it. Is I know he was, you know, one of the main characters in the TV show Nikita, so that's what I kind of associate him with. But it was kind of interesting. He was like, Jim, you left the army for this city, and he's like, it grows on you because it's like the way the city is, it's kind of like, yeah, Gotham is pretty damn unique, isn't it? I love that about it. Just him being like, wow, he's like, wait, the guy has a wristband that, like, you know, will set off a trap if he's, you know, his heart rate goes 10 above or 10 below. And Jim's like, yeah, that's Gotham for you. I'm like, that is some Gotham stuff. That is something you'd only probably see in Gotham like that. So, but it does ultimately all lead back to Strange. That whole conversation with Penguin I thought was kind of interesting because Penguin's like, the fact of the matter is, after Butch, you're my closest friend. He's like, you literally shot Butch, and he's like, that's the reason why I saved you, because it's like, yeah, Penguin really doesn't have many friends. So, and all of his friends he does have twisted relationships with, like him and Butch had their twisted relationship. That ended the way it did, and the same thing for him and Ed. He's like, if we are enemies, Ed, I will let you know after everything we've been through together. And then Ed's like, I'll respect that, and if I'm going to, you know, I will look you in the eyes when I stab you in the heart, which is like, huh. That seems very foreshadowing, but maybe not. So that was kind of interesting. But it turns out it was Strange behind all this. It did not turn out to be what I thought it was, because I was like, oh, it's going to end up, because my thought was like, oh, like, you know, Jeremiah is the one that's behind everything. But it's like, no, the one that's behind it is, well, for one, Jim ends up finding out his buddy is the bad guy in this. But he's here to clean up the mess. That's why he killed the guy, because he's cleaning up anything that would tie to Ed Nigma, because Nigma is the last clue in all of this. Because it's like this secretary, Walker, is behind this. They did say Walker, right, and not Waller? Because it seems like, because they kept saying that, I'm like, Is this supposed to be like some Amanda Waller, like Suicide Squad crap? I mean, I just say that because it's like chips in people's brains. We literally kind of dealing with that a little bit in Arrow, just because like, well, it's not Amanda Waller anymore, but you know, at one point in time she was implanting bombs in people's heads. The same thing in the Suicide Squad situation, but they're not necessarily controlling people. So maybe this isn't Waller. Maybe this isn't even supposed to be like Gotham's Waller, being this Secretary Walker, but maybe she's just a twisted person. We still don't know why the hell she's doing that, because she is the one behind the helicopter going up. And because that's why I thought it was Jeremiah, because it's like, it had to be someone that knew what was going to happen. Like, oh, so now in retrospect, it's most likely that Jim told her what was going down, so she set that in motion. But it's like that she's been planning this months in advance, because all that went down when with Strange months ago, you know, since season 4's finale. So it's like, which also makes me wonder, Lee must not have survived, or, you know, maybe it's just a choice. Maybe like Marina Baccarin, the actress who plays her, decided not to come back for the show, because it's like every time they bring up Ed, they never bring up Lee. So I'm like, oh, I guess that's just kind of like a potentially off-screen death type of situation. I'm assuming, just because that still hasn't come back up. So not unless they're doing something else with that. But for now, that was kind of interesting. That's kind of my thought process. But nevertheless, it's kind of interesting because she wants the secretary, she wants Jim to prove his loyalty and put a bullet in Enigma's head. So it's like, what are you planning on doing? Like, are you is there stuff that went down in Gotham that she's trying to cover up, like something that she's been a part of even before this, that she's doing all that, or she's trying to be the big hero in all of this? Like, I don't understand what you're doing, because it's like, because she's also talking about like the final steps in all of this, and it's like, oh, you can almost like Jim can save people if he kills Enigma, but it's like, yeah, Enigma's done some stuff, but he's not, because even Penguin, you know, going back to the conversation of like, yeah, Ed's, you know, done some traps, you know, he knows about things, he doesn't do the mass murder thing, but the fact of the matter is, it's like, hey, he kills a few people here and there, but, you know, mass murder ain't kind of his thing like that, you know, because Ed, if he is something as kind of, you know, simple as just shooting an RPG, not his thing. Like, he likes traps. Obviously, like, he set up Jim and LaGuerta in that whole situation of like, oh yeah, there's traps. So it plays into that role, but it's interesting. And now Ed is being sent to hunt down Jim, so that's definitely fascinating to see how that kind of ends up playing out. I'm so curious about what her motives would be. Like, what is she trying to cover up? What is she trying to do to go to such extents and lengths? So that's one thing we gotta think about going forward. Another thing that went down this episode is kind of interesting, is the relationship between Bruce and Selena. I was talking about like the developments for, like, Selena is being praised at Sirens for killing Jeremiah. And it's interesting because I guess this is what they're kind of going for. It's immediately what I thought in my head. It's like, especially when you see her over there drinking afterwards, it's very reflective. And they make a point to also point it out, because Bruce is comparing his situation to Selena's. The whole like, well, obviously because Selena was there for him when he was kind of like in his dark place last season after the whole Ra's al Ghul, Ra's al Ghul situation. Because, you know, in Alfred's eyes, it's like, no, your situation is different. You were used as a tool, so what you did doesn't count in that regard. But Selena, she had open eyes, and she made that choice. You've got to understand that, and you got to respect that. That was the choice she made, you know. But, you know, it's like, no. Like, he's like, the fact of the matter is, it's like, you don't know Selena like I do. And he tries to talk to her, and she brings up something I'd completely forgotten about, that I guess she never told Bruce that. She was there the night his parents died. I was like, right, I'd almost let that slip my mind. That was like 4 seasons ago. I was like, right, she was there. And she talks about the fact is, I didn't do anything. I didn't scream for help. I didn't scream for him to stop. I just sat there and watched, and I never did anything about it. I never tried to help with that whole situation. Because I was like, yeah, because Jim had found her because she was there, but, you know, it never led necessarily to anywhere, at least not that I remember. And it's like, yeah, like, that was kind of a point in the story. And it's like, yeah, that never circled back to Bruce. He never knew that about Selena this entire time. Kind of in her mind, it's like, that kind of proves that you don't know me. And it's also kind of like, you know why? Because the fact of the matter is, I didn't do it because I was scared. The only scared kid back then was you. For me, I just didn't want to stake my life on someone else's situation. Kind of like, I don't go out of my way to help people if it's going to cost me my own life. She's like, that's who I was and that's who I am. We are not the same. Because Bruce is willing to kind of sacrifice himself for other people. And, you know, it's kind of interesting because it seems like it is not, because it didn't give her the satisfaction she thought. Getting revenge like that, I think it, you know, it left her hollow, because when you have that anger, at the very least, it leaves you with something. But after it's all gone and said and done, you have nothing afterwards. I think that's kind of what they're kind of going for with Selena. So, like I said, it's just interesting, like the parallels. And it's interesting because Bruce went to go to Jim for advice, but he ended up finding Harvey. And Harvey actually gave him some good advice of being like, the fact of the matter is, because for Bruce, it's like, the people I love are not willing to do good. And, you know, it's like, will we make it out of this? Even when it's all said and done, he's like, we find our way out of this situation. Will we like who we are? Will we actually be the good people we want to be? Like, is there, you know, if we keep down this route, like, what's left to save when it's all said and done? And, you know, you have like Harvey being like, I get it. He's like, I feel like that a lot of times. So what I do is I focus on these other cases that I have, other paperwork, because it's the small acts, it's the little things, the act by act, you know, the deed by deed that really matters in the long run. It's kind of like, that's all you can do to kind of put forth your, you know, all you can do is keep moving forward and doing little by little to kind of like fix the situation. And it actually kind of resonated with Bruce, and he's like, thanks. I love Harvey. I was talking to him and then he looks up and he's going, it's like, kids fast. It's like, I love that he does that from time to time, does his Batman thing of disappearing like that. It's such a nice thing. But that was just kind of interesting, and I'm curious to see what Bruce will do about that. I mean, in the long run, we end up finding out, oh, in actuality, Jeremiah isn't dead. It's like, oh, I was, because I thought up all these things of like, oh, that could be Jeremiah, because I knew he wasn't dead. I was like, oh, maybe it's Clayface or something. It's like, no, it was Jeremiah. It's like, the whole point was like, oh no, I needed Selena to stab me. I also love that Harley's like, you should have worn that armor I got you. I'm wondering, is it like some of his suits are lined with like stuff, like if you're familiar with Daredevil, kind of like Wilson Fisk in season 1, I wonder if it's something like that. But nevertheless, it seems like this was all part of some grand plan of his. He ended up he needed Selena to stab him, to kind of think he was dead, because I think the whole point is this is all about Bruce. Selena plays a big part in Bruce's life. I guess like send Selena on this journey, kind of making her think she's satisfied. Like, I guess, you know, he knows how it would affect Selena, and he knows how in turn Selena's actions and just what she's going through would affect Bruce. And then at the end, he's like, oh, I love family reunions. When he gets in front of those people, I'm like, dude. I immediately, after I saw that, I was like, that's super fucked up. He got people to get plastic surgery to look like Bruce's parents. That's super twisted and messed up. I kind of like that, in a sense of like, I don't know if Joker's ever done that in the comic books or not, where they're pulling that from. That'd be kind of interesting if that was something from the comic books. Even if it wasn't, and that's just something they made up, that's interesting and super messed up, because Jeremiah knows how that's kind of like Bruce is sadly in a messed up way. That's his foundation. And so Jeremiah is all about pushing Bruce in a direction that he needs to go. I guess this is supposed to be like some reminder, like he's playing these little games because it's about forging him and himself as well as Bruce into who he needs them to be, you know? So it's interesting. I'm curious to see how that all plays out, like what that ends up being, you know, in a grand scheme of things. So, because it looks like this is also connected to that tunnel he was like digging the entire time. Is like, why were you, was he working on this the entire time? Is that why he was digging that tunnel? Because he was trying to get back to this project he's been working on the entire time? Ever since he hooked up with Ra's al Ghul last season, he probably already had this all implemented, and he was talking to whoever it was on the outside, trying to make sure things were done. So he's, now he's moving into his final phases. I'm assuming that's what that's all about, because it's like, oh, he dug the tunnel, and now it's like, oh, everything's a go. So it's like, yeah, he's been working on this ever since before the bridges blew up. So it's like, that's interesting. It kind of shows you how far in advance he's kind of planned and thought things out too, just because it's all been leading to this. Also kind of, plays into the whole like, man, you were willing to get stabbed. He was like, I had to at least let Selena stab me at the very least once, but she got in a couple more. So, for his twisted plan. Like I said, it's that, what is the word? Symbiotic is the word I'm trying to look for. Relationship between him and Bruce. Like, he feeds off of it. It's like Bruce and me, we're kind of night and day, two sides of the same coin type of situation. And I think, he's playing into that. He's feeding on that. And, like I said, it's all about making Bruce who he needs to be while also embracing his own destiny, So, that's so fascinating to me. And, I'm just curious to see what the byproduct of this is. Like, because to me, this is going to be such a fascinating thing because that's one thing I have picked up over the years. Like in some canons, Joker knows who Bruce is, that Bruce is Batman. Doesn't care because the fact of the matter is he's not trying to give out his identity. It's like, yo, you and me, I don't want to ruin this thing between us. So, he uses it to his advantage sometimes, but he keeps it to himself because he doesn't ever want to lose Batman. And I think that's going to play an interesting role in the dynamic between them in this canon. Like Joker and Batman going forward would just be like, because he knows Bruce, he got to know Bruce. And so it's going to add this layer to their relationship. I think is going to be an interesting thing, So, like I said, I'm very interested to see where that all leads to. Also, like I said, finding out like what this whole situation with Ed is, like why they did that, like why they're trying to put Gotham in such a terrible situation. Because it's like they want power over them because it's like they'll be forever grateful. It's like no, we don't want you saving and helping and keeping hope alive. We need you in despair so we can take over. So because they're even making a point that like he went in there, it's like, oh yeah, I'm going in here and I'm wiping out all the villains. So it's like they must have plans for Gotham, because he was even going to go after Scarecrow because like Penguin's at the top of his list and Riddler was on his list. I'm assuming Barbara probably might be too, so that might be something she has to look out for. But that's what I'm chalking that up to, but maybe not. We'll kind of have to wait and see in that regard, like what they're planning. Like they must be planning an occupation of their own for whatever reason, because it does seem like they're also bringing in Hugo Strange because they're like, oh no, don't like escort the Doctor out of here. So he must be part of whatever plan that they're planning, which means even Strange probably knew what they were up to. Who knows? Like I said, we'll have to wait and see. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, low light to the force, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.